Today we're going to talk about screen printing Stompboxes, what it is, how to do it, and what you need to get started. Hi there, thanks for joining me. I hope you had a great week. My name's Marcus, this is Reeves Electro, and you're watching the Friday Finish. Right, screen printing on Stompboxes. It's old-fashioned technology, but there are still places and situations that it works in. Lots of things. There's lots of other ways of decorating your guitar pedals, and if you're doing low numbers, ones, twos, maybe even tens, water slides or getting them digitally printed at other agencies, yeah, that works great. But it can work out expensive, and some of us just like a challenge, to be honest. So in this video I'm going to talk about specifically screen printing on Stompboxes. I'm going to start with some sort of pros and cons, and then I'm going to kind of explain what you need for a basic setup, and then how it works, and kind of just a précis over all of that at the end. Why would you want to screen print? One of the best reasons is it's fast when you get to a certain quantity. The bigger the quantity, the faster it gets, basically. It takes a bit of setup, but if you want to do 20, 25, 30, 40, then screen print is really worth looking at. You might have to adapt your artwork, you might not, depends. It doesn't really do photography very well, but other than that, it's definitely worth looking at for, if your numbers are going up. It's also very economic, again, if you get to, higher numbers. One of the big things though is that it's repeatable. I know digital is, but that's mad expensive if you're doing more than 4 or 5. And with screen printing, the registration is exactly the same every print as long as you're doing it right. So it is smelly. It can be messy. And one of the things I think that puts a lot of people off is there's quite a steep learning curve. Hopefully I'll be able to kind of move you forward from just having no idea what goes on. One of the other things I should mention actually is the colour quality compared to any other form of decoration. You look at someone like Earthquaker Devices, where they've got a very wide colour palette of quite unusual colours. A lot of pastels, a lot of mustardy colours, a lot of slatey sort of colours, which are really notoriously difficult to do on digital. With water slides is just not economical really. So yeah, the color quality is really good with screen printing. So what are you going to need? Well, here's something I prepared earlier basically. So obviously, first of all, you're going to need a silk screen. These are the ones I use. This is a Black Hat Sound. I don't know whether you can see that. So they're a frame covered in, it's not silk anymore, in a polyester mesh. And then it has a photosensitive emulsion. Oh, there you can see it. Put on it, and a negative then is sandwiched on it. It's exposed to light, and where it's exposed it hardens. Where it isn't, it washes away and leaves gaps in the mesh that then the ink can be forced through. Couple of things, these meshes come in different thread counts. Okay, for graphic printing in the UK, I don't know what the equivalents are in America or in other metric countries, but this is 110 threads per inch, and the other kind of industry standard is 90 threads per inch. If you're doing fine work, 110 is great. If you're doing something that's not so fine but you want lots of colour, 90 is pretty good. The difference is the resolution. Basically, where the threads cross is a bigger gap. Okay, so if you've got imagine you've got threads crossing and you've got a line that goes diagonally on a coarser mesh, you're going to find that that edge is going to be slightly jagged because it will want to follow the threads, basically, rather than be a straight line of where the emulsion is. I'll go into more about screens a little bit later because that's quite complicated. I'm just going to kind of go over what you need really. You'll need squeegees. This is what you use to pull the ink through the mesh. They come in basically there's lots of different rubbers, but there are two. The most popular types of rubbers are red and green. Red is much softer and bendier and will put down a lot more ink, but you find that you can't get so much pressure, and also they don't reproduce sharp lines as well. Green is a lot harder and a lot stiffer, you can see there, compared to there. Okay, I use green 90% of the time. What you will find is green does get nicks in the edge, and when you pull it'll create a line, and there'll be a line with just slightly less pressure, and that can come out in the print. So there's pros and cons, but I find the resolution and the sharpness I can get with a green squeegee outweighs that. You'll also need minimum a pair of screen hinges. I'll show you how you set these up. I mean, you can get these on eBay for like 15-20 quid a set. You can go for, I mean, they make setting up a little bit trickier. It's what I use all the time, but you can, if you want to spend a couple of $100, get a small screen printing bed that's already got the hinge in it, and it's height adjustable, which can be quite important. We'll get to that part later, but you can kind of micro adjust the height of the screen from the surface that you're printing on. But I find I can cabodge around that with no problems. Obviously you'll need ink. Now, if you are printing graphics, I generally print etch resists, which is quite rare, so I'm not really going to talk too much about that. If you're printing graphics, enamel, you need something that's going to stick well and be hard wearing. And enamel ink or paint is probably the best thing for that. Very, very hard wearing. Signwriters paint works an absolute treat. One shot signwriters paint is the dogs, basically. Lots of really groovy colours, and yeah, it's great. There are a couple of issues with it, which again I'll explain a little bit later, but in the long run that's the gear really to use. You'll need some wash up, methoxypropanol basically, but yeah, white screen wash up. You'll need that because you'll be washing your screen and your equipment a lot. Again, I buy mine on eBay. Straightforward. And that's pretty much it. I built a screen print, excuse me, I built myself a screen printing jig. and that's literally all I use. So we've got a piece of countertop, chipboard countertop, and that's 38 millimeters tall. Now Stompbox is anything between 31 and 43, something like that. There are some bigger ones, but that's kind of, you know, the rough range. So you can more or less adjust up and down with that by padding out underneath with something. And I just literally screw the hinges on there, and let me show you. Hold on. I don't know whether this is going to come round. Yes. Oh, perfect. So, oops, just banged the tripod there. No, I'll have to do it side on. Oh, here we go. So literally, get it out of the way. All we're doing is we've got that, so that lifts up and down, and then I use an old enclosure to space it at the back, and that means that then that enclosure can go underneath, and there's what's known as a snap. So that's pretty much it, you know, quite straightforward. Okay, getting screens made. Let me move this out of the way just for a second. Getting a screen made. Okay, you're going to have to hunt around locally, a bit of Google, and maybe asking around, finding a screen printing shop or a sign shop or something like that to make them up. There might be. I've got a old friend in the print industry who gets my screens made up. I was 10 years a screen printer, so I've got a few contacts, so I have an advantage, I guess. Things to know about screens. As I explained, there are two basic thread counts. If you're looking online and you see people advertising 43 or very low mesh count screens, don't get those. They are intended for t-shirts, and the t-shirt ink is very, very much thicker, and you need to put more ink down. So the really open thread count of a 43 TPI screen is important for t-shirts, but if you're printing graphics, it's absolutely useless. I was going to swear then. So you need either 90, I would go most of the time for 110. So this is a 110 thread screen. Now there's another choice. The brown area here is called the emulsion. That's what blocks out, that's what you make the image with. That is applied as a liquid. It is scraped on, quite accurately, but it's scraped on as a liquid. It's dried. The film is then put on it. It is exposed, and then the unexposed parts are washed away. There is also, and that's very hard wearing, really hard wearing. There's also, but it suffers a little bit with resolution. I don't find that an issue, but some people want things really, really pin sharp and very, very straight lines. If you want that, there's a film that is put on, that is rolled on to the screen, and because it's already kind of dry, it doesn't soak into the screen. So when it's exposed, as I explained, the emulsion following the lines of the screen, with a film, it very much more has a straight line. But there's always a drawback. Film is less robust, and because I get these screens made up, and I might want this screen to last 10 years. Okay, so I want to be able to dig this off my shelf and put it in, print away, clean it up, not worry about it degrading. So I always use emulsion. One other thing about longevity, silk screens split really easily. They're under quite a lot of pressure. They're very tight. Any bit of grit or anything in there as you pull the ink across could split it. So you have to be careful. Be very clean, make sure you dust them down before you start printing, before you put any ink on them. Get all the stuff off, handle them, store them very carefully, handle them very carefully, because you don't want to split them, because you just have to get a new one made up. So that's that. You are going to be neat. Let me put that. You are going to need to be fairly au fait with digital design packages to get the best out of this, really. If you go to a screen printers, they'll probably, if you don't know anything about preparing stuff for print, you might find that they'll tell you stuff that you don't really understand. So yeah, have a gen up on your working with InDesign or Photoshop or Illustrator or whatever it is you use. Okay, so let's kind of get down to the nitty-gritty of how you actually screen print. Right, so there was one thing I forgot when I talk about what you need on the jig, and that's something to register your prints up against. I built this little jig. These are threaded coach bolts, which I can lock there, and then these three points cause a place where it registers up against every time. It's always going to be in the same place. Okay, so that screws onto there. Okay, I'm not going to push it down because just because I don't really need to. Okay, so that's there. Sorry, this is a bit faffy. Okay, so the screen just drops in. Tighten that up. Now, so you've got your image there. What you want to do is use a torch or anything you like, just to kind of get that roughly in the right place. Okay, when that's in the right place, okay, you'll then need to adjust it. Now, you don't necessarily need something complicated like this. You could use something, some little chips of Perspex or something with some double-sided tape, but you will have to lift them and keep moving them. So you want something that it's going to go up against and be the same every time. Okay, so just with a little bit of trial and error, shift the screen around, shift your Stompbox around until it's in the right place. Lock everything down so you know that where this image is going to land is going to be where you want it on your Stompbox. Now, how high should you have your screen? You don't want it sitting directly on the surface that you're printing on. You need what's called a snap. Now, I would equate that to the action of a guitar, something similar. Okay, maybe a little bit higher, 3 to 4 millimeters. And what that does is, as you pull I won't use this squeegee because it's dry. I'll use this suede bound diary. As you pull the squeegee across, if it's flat, it will just smudge, basically. But if you've got a little bit of relief, when you pull that across, what happens is the screen lifts up. Yeah, I can't really explain that with my arm, but the screen kind of snaps back up as you pull. So that there needs to be a little bit of a gap, like I say, 3 to 4 millimeters. and then you just pull across. Okay, how much pressure? Just enough pressure to put all the ink down. If you press too hard, you may well squidge the ink everywhere, and also if you press too hard, when you go off the end, you might press down past the screen, the Stompbox, the enclosure, and you could even split the screen, but you'll smudge the last piece there. Sometimes I have a runoff. I build up something that's got a little runoff so that the pressure remains uniform. But recently I haven't been doing that. Okay, so that's set up. It will all be a case of learning as you do it. So my advice is just to crack on and try it. One of the other things with ink and printing, if you're in a hot country or in a hot environment, and you leave your screen for a few minutes unattended, you might find that the ink starts to dry in the screen, and because on a 110 mesh those holes are so very small, the ink dries in those holes in the mesh, and so you get what's called drying in, and you have to wash the screen out, usually on the finer parts of the screen of the image, and it'll dry together, so you need to wash that out. Now you can get additives for your ink called a retardant, which slows down the drying time. I'm not sure you can get it. I think you can get it for the one shot, but it slows down your drying time. So obviously your curing time after you've printed everything might take a little longer, but you don't have to keep washing it up to keep the image sharp. Conversely, if you're in a very cold climate, you might find that your curing of the prints is taking a long time. You might want to find yourself a little curing oven. I actually bought a 70s food and plate warmer, like a hostess trolley, from eBay for about £50. Best thing I've ever bought. Seriously, I won't move the camera around to show you, but it is just go on eBay and have a look. That is great for curing in the winter, for curing off prints and any painting that I'm doing. Okay, so I mean that's a very brief explanation of screen printing. There's loads more to it. There is loads more to it. I could probably waffle on for another hour about it, but the one thing I would say is you can wipe the Stompboxes off. Okay, so if you're serious about it and you've got a fairly analytical brain, I would say just get set up and start practicing. And if you come across a problem that you can't solve, get on Google, because the answers will be there. That is about it. Well, I think that covered all the bases. There's probably lots of things that I missed out that I didn't cover. So if there is anything, if you have any questions, drop them in down the comments. If you've got anything else to say, again, drop it in. If you disagree, drop it in. I'm all up for discussions about things. Please subscribe, ring the bell icon. You'll get notifications of all the other things I'm doing. And lastly, thank you for watching. My name's Marcus. This is Reeves Electro. And remember, keep it fuzzy.